In the heart of the unforgiving slums of Manila, a 22-year-old man named Daniel struggles to survive in a world where hope seems like a distant dream. Born into the harshest poverty, Daniel's life has been an endless battle against the forces of fate. His mother, a woman full of love and promise, passed away when he was just 7, leaving him to fend for himself. His father, a man with calloused hands and a work ethic forged by years of grueling labor, became his sole guardian. For years, his father worked tirelessly, rummaging through piles of trash, doing whatever it took to provide for his son. Each day, his father's sweat and sacrifice were the only things keeping them alive. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Daniel's father, the one person who had always been there to protect him, fell gravely ill. In a cruel twist of irony, they had no money to cover the hospital bills that could have saved him. Desperate, Daniel pleaded with anyone who would listen, begging for help to save the only family he had left. But the world turned its back on them, offering nothing but cold indifference. His father was turned away, left to suffer without a shred of dignity. 2 days later, in the heart of Manila, where people rush past each other without a second glance, his father died alone on a crowded street. And through it all, Daniel, his heart broken and his spirit shattered, cried out in anguish, begging for someone, anyone, to offer a glimmer of compassion. But no one cared. No one heard his cries. Daniel stood there, watching the life drain from his father's body, his pleas ignored by the very people who shared the same streets. It was then that he realized the true cruelty of the world, a world that would let a father die alone, a son helpless, in the shadows of a bustling city where humanity seemed to have vanished. And as Daniel's world crumbled around him, he vowed that he would never forget this moment. The pain of that day would stay with him forever, burning a fire within him to survive, to fight, and to make sure that no one else would have to endure the same fate. With no family, no money, and no future, Daniel was forced to survive the only way he knew, scavenging through the endless piles of waste that lined the city's outskirts. It was a brutal existence, but he clung to one thing: hope. One fateful afternoon, as Daniel sifted through a massive junkyard outside Manila, searching for anything of value, he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. A man, bruised, battered, and barely breathing, lay half-buried beneath the trash. His pale skin, torn designer suit, and foreign features told Daniel that he was no ordinary person. Without a second thought, Daniel pulled him out, ignoring the filth and blood, and carried him home. For days, Daniel nursed the stranger back to health, using scraps of food and herbal remedies he had learned from his late father. When the man finally awoke, his weak voice revealed his identity: Richard Whitmore, an Australian billionaire. Richard had been kidnapped from his luxury hotel weeks ago, held for ransom, and left for dead when his captors believed no one would pay. The authorities had given up searching, assuming him lost forever. But Daniel had given him a second chance. With Daniel's help, Richard contacted the Australian embassy. Soon, police stormed Manila's underworld, arresting the men responsible for his abduction. Grateful beyond words, Richard made a promise. He wouldn't leave Daniel behind. "You saved my life, son. Now let me change yours." Richard took Daniel to Australia, giving him a home, an education, and a future. It was a world Daniel had only seen in movies. Endless skyscrapers, luxury cars, and the kind of wealth he had never imagined. Richard had a daughter, Amelia Whitmore, a woman whose beauty was rivaled only by the quiet strength she carried in her heart. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with a simple smile, her presence radiating grace and compassion. To the world, she seemed perfect, everything Daniel could never have imagined himself being with. But to Amelia, Daniel was nothing more than her father's mysterious guest, a young man who had come from the shadows of a life filled with hardship. He was a man whose scars ran deep, both physically and emotionally. And at first, she couldn't see beyond that. In the beginning, Amelia kept her distance. She was polite but aloof, cautious of the man who had suddenly appeared in her life, the stranger who had come from a world so different from her own. Daniel, on the other hand, was humble, always respectful but distant in his own way. He wasn't used to luxury, wasn't accustomed to being surrounded by people who saw him as more than just a survivor. He hadn't known what to expect when he arrived in Australia, but he never imagined he would find himself in the orbit of someone like Amelia. Yet as time passed, something unexpected began to unfold between them. Amelia began to notice the quiet strength in Daniel, the resilience that had carried him through life's darkest moments. She saw the way he carried himself, not with arrogance, but with a humble dignity that spoke volumes. She saw the kindness in his eyes, the softness in his voice when he spoke to others, and the way he treated those who had nothing to offer him. He didn't just survive, he thrived by helping others, by giving what little he had. And it was in these quiet moments, the ones that didn't draw attention but spoke directly to the soul, that Amelia's heart began to change. She began to see him not as a charity case or a boy from the streets, but as someone who had fought for every inch of the life he now lived. She saw the fire in his heart, the passion that burned brighter than anything she had ever known. In him, she saw something she had never expected, a man whose heart was as strong as his spirit, whose love was as pure as the life he had fought to build. As their paths crossed more often, their connection grew undeniable. They spoke late into the night, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Amelia told him about her sheltered life, the expectations placed on her as the daughter of a billionaire, the weight of being perfect, always poised. Daniel, in turn, opened up about his struggles, the pain of losing everything and the battle to find his place in a world that had been so unkind. They were from different worlds, yes, but in those quiet moments, they began to understand each other in ways that no one else could. And then, like wildfire spreading across dry land, love blossomed. It started as a flicker, a brief glance, a stolen smile, but it quickly grew into something much more powerful, consuming both of them in a whirlwind of emotions neither of them had expected. Amelia found herself thinking about Daniel constantly, her heart racing whenever he was near. She couldn't deny it anymore, she was falling for him. For Daniel, it was like a dream he had never dared to imagine. To be loved, not out of pity or obligation, but because of who he truly was. To find someone who saw him, who understood him, not just as the boy from the slums, but as a man worthy of love and respect. Every moment with Amelia felt like a gift, and he cherished her in ways words could never capture. When Richard discovered their love, he didn't resist. He saw it in their eyes, the undeniable connection, the love that had grown between them, defying every boundary, every expectation. At first he had watched from the sidelines, cautious, unsure if this was simply a passing infatuation or something deeper. But as he saw the way they looked at each other, the way their hearts beat in sync, he knew. He knew that Daniel was no ordinary man. The young man who had saved his life was now the one who had captured his daughter's heart. And in that moment, Richard understood something profound. Daniel was family now, with a heart full of pride and a deep, abiding love for both of them. Richard embraced their relationship. He had brought Daniel into his life as a savior. But now, Daniel had become so much more. He was part of the family, a son-in-law who had earned his place not just with his deeds, but with his heart. And in that embrace, Daniel found a new kind of acceptance, one that had nothing to do with wealth or privilege, but everything to do with love. Years later, Daniel stood at the altar, his heart pounding like a distant drum. The sun filtered through the stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the grand hall. But Daniel's eyes saw only one thing: Amelia. She was a vision of grace, her white gown flowing like a river of silk, each step bringing her closer to him. His mind raced back to the days when his world was nothing but hunger and hardship, when the cold pavements of Manila were both his home and his prison. And now here he was, no longer the boy who once begged for scraps, but a man, standing tall and proud, waiting to marry the daughter of the very man who had saved his life. Tears welled in his eyes as Amelia finally reached him. She gently took his hand, and in that moment, it wasn't wealth or status that bound them. It was love. Pure, unyielding, and undeniable love. They were from different worlds, yet their hearts had found each other in the most unexpected way. As they exchanged vows, Daniel's voice trembled with emotion. "I once thought my life would always be about survival," he whispered. "But then you came along, and suddenly, I had a reason to live, not just to exist." Amelia's voice broke as she replied, "You showed me what true strength looks like. You taught me that love doesn't see where we come from. It sees who we are." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in cheers, but for Daniel and Amelia, the world melted away. Their first kiss was a silent promise, a vow that no matter what life threw their way, they would stand together forever. But Daniel's story didn't end there. With his newfound wealth, he returned to Manila not to forget his past, but to honor it. He built shelters for the homeless, ensuring no child would have to beg as he once did. He funded hospitals so that no father would ever be turned away for lack of money. And in the heart of the city, he erected a statue in memory of his own father, a symbol of sacrifice and undying love. Because Daniel was more than just a survivor, he was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the most broken paths could lead to the most beautiful destinations. And as he lay in bed each night beside Amelia, he would often look out the window at the stars above, grateful not for the wealth or the luxury, but for the love that had mended his once shattered heart. For Daniel, the sweetest ending wasn't the life of riches, it was the life of love. Finally, are you planning to travel to the Philippines, Southeast Asia, or anywhere else in the world and looking for the cheapest airline tickets? Don't let high travel costs hold you back from your dream adventure. Whether you're dreaming of pristine beaches, bustling cities, or cultural escapes, we've got you covered. Start your journey today by finding the best deals on flights. Click the link below to explore unbeatable prices and make your travel plans a reality. Your next adventure is just a booking away. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Make sure to tap the notification bell so you're always the first to know when we upload new videos. Thanks for watching. In the heart of the unforgiving slums of Manila,